Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of the day. I am Dr. K.R. Mohamed Sufiyan, Assistant Professor and Research Supervisor, PG and Research Department of Commerce, C. Abdul Hakim College, Melvisharam. So today I am going to discuss about what is meant by a central bank and what is the necessity of a central bank, features or characteristics of a central bank, and differences between a central bank and a commercial bank. So let's get started. We'll first introduce the topic, what is meant by central bank. The central bank, it occupies a pivotal position in the monetary and banking structure of the country. It is the leader of the money market. It acts as a guardian and controller of commercial banks, that is, it supervises, regulates and controls the activities of the entire commercial banking system in the country. Though it is generally owned by the central government, it is an independent body exercising its own powers and authority, and they are having their own board, that is what we call it as Central Board of RBI. They regulate the entire banking system as well as they regulate the monetary policy of the country. Next we move on to the definitions. Some of the famous definitions which has been given by some of the experts. One of the experts, Professor R.S. Sayers, he says that the business of a central bank as distinguished from a commercial bank is to control the commercial bank in such a way as to promote the general monetary policy of the state. Then the second definition, which has been given by Ira Smith, in that definition he says that the primary definition of a central bank is a banking system in which a single bank has either a complete or a residuary monopoly in the note issue. From these definitions, we can say that, or we can come to a conclusion that each expert, they have given the definition based on a important function of the central bank. For example, Ira Smith, he has given the definition based of the function of currency issue, which is one of the main function of a central bank. Similarly, R.S. Sayers has given the definition based on the function of the central bank to regulate the monetary policy of the state. So like that, lot of definitions has been given by lot of authors based on some of the important functions which are performed by the central bank. Next we move on to what is the necessity of a central bank. In short, we can say why a central bank is required for every country. So the first reason, the first necessity of a central bank is credit control. We know very well, and we already discussed in the functions of commercial bank, that one of the major function of a commercial bank is to create credit through their daily operations, that is through their operations or functions of accepting deposits and granting loans. The credit creation, if it is done within a limit, then it is very good for an economy, it is very good for the development of the country. But at the same time, it possesses a serious danger when there is no control on it. So therefore, it becomes necessary to have a central bank in the country to control the credit as well as to protect the health of the banking system in the country. The second important necessity of a central bank is to issue of paper currency. As we know very well, before the concept of central bank, for example in India, before the evolution of Reserve Bank of India in the year 1935, we know the history that different banks were given the power to issue the currency notes. But that created lot of hurdles and a lot of problems because there was no strict discipline among the banks. Now it becomes very important for a country, that is to provide a centralized, to give the responsibility to a centralized institution whereby the strict discipline can be maintained. So as we are aware that the issue of paper currency, is the right of the central government, and whereby the central government delegates this right in India to Reserve Bank of India. So the Reserve Bank of India is responsible to issue the paper currency with a strict discipline which will not be interfered by any external sources, whereby the issue can be maintained with discipline, as well as the value of the currency can be maintained, or the value of the currency can be stabilized. Then the third important necessity of a central bank is helping the commercial banks. So one of the main factor why the concept of central bank get very popular among the countries is they started to help the commercial banks, because in olden days one of the main problems which was faced by the banking industry is that if the banks they face any financial crunch or crisis, they were not in a position to come out from that, because there was no organization to help them. So once this concept of central bank was introduced in England, whereby one of the responsibility was given that if any commercial bank is facing any financial crisis, now the central bank has to go and help that commercial bank to come out from that crisis, so that they can be saved from bankruptcy. So this concept gained very much, this concept gained popularity, and for that reason neighboring countries of England, that is France, Germany and all those countries immediately started their central bank, their own central bank. So that's why the central bank is very necessary, because the central bank helps the commercial banks in times of financial crisis. So without central banks, commercial banks may not be able to survive at the time of crisis. Similarly, one of the important necessity of a central bank is implementing government policies. As we all know, the government accounts are maintained by the central bank. In India, the government accounts are maintained by the Reserve Bank of India. So the financial policies are directly related to the health of the country. So therefore, the central bank is very much necessary. They carefully examine the government policies and they guide them to implement them. Then the next important necessity is national welfare. The central bank, it works successfully in the interest of the public, because the aim of the central bank is not to earn profit, but at the same time, without suffering loss, the bank should work in national interest. Now the last necessity of a central bank is monetary and financial stability. As it is owned by the government and it is controlled by the government, so by having the control over the monetary economy, the central bank keeps the quality and value of currency at high. Similarly, they maintain the stability of the financial, that is they maintain the financial stability, whereby the value of the currency remains stable. This stability is an important factor in attracting the foreign investments. So these are some of the main reasons for which every country requires a central bank. So next we move on to what are the features or characteristics of a central bank. So some of the important features or characteristics has been discussed. So it has more service motive than profit motive, because a central bank is started only for the benefit of the country, and they will be working in the interest of the public as well as in the interest of the nation. Then the second characteristics, as it is owned by the government, hence it is managed by persons appointed by government. And for your information, in India, that is the central bank in India, that is the Reserve Bank of India, is maintained by a central board which is located in the head office in Mumbai, and 4 local boards are there, that is northern, southern, eastern and western. with headquarters in New Delhi, Chennai, Kolkata, and Mumbai, by whereby the local boards are situated, and from that they are managing the local boards, and a central board is there whereby a maximum of 21 persons can be appointed by the government to look after the affairs of the Reserve Bank of India. Then the third characteristics, it is the apex bank in the country, so therefore it is the leader of the banking and financial system. As it is the leader of the financial system, it controls the entire banking system, including the commercial banks. So one of the next features, it possesses the monopoly of note issue. So therefore it maintains the value of the currency. So I will tell you during this point that the currency issue in India, it is the sole responsibility of the government of India. By keeping the minting of coin with itself, the government has delegated the power to issue the currency note to the RBI. So therefore now the RBI is possessing the monopoly of note issue. The next important characteristics is it acts as a banker to the government, and also it takes activities in consultation with the government. Not only it is acting as a banker to the government, it is acting as an agent and advisor to the government also. Similarly, one of the important characteristics of a central bank is that it helps the government in fulfilling the economic plans. Next, we move on to the differences between a central bank and a commercial bank. So what are the major differences between a central bank and a commercial bank? So the central bank is the apex bank. We know very well, apex means the highest point, that is, it is the highest bank in the country. Therefore, all the banking system, they come under the Reserve Bank of India, that is the central bank in India, and they are controlling the entire banking system. Whereas the commercial banks, it is only a constituent unit of the banking system. They have to follow the rules and regulations which are framed by the central bank, that is the Reserve Bank of India in case of India. The main objective of a central bank is to do service for the country, is to do service for the nation, whereas the main objective of a commercial bank is to earn profit. In case of a commercial banks, it is either owned by government or private or both. In India, we have public sector banks, private sector banks, foreign banks, all those banks are there. Whereas in case of a central bank, that is the Reserve Bank of India, it is a bank which is fully owned, controlled and governed by the government of India. So similarly, one of the important differences between a central bank and a commercial bank is that the banker-customer relationship is not established in case of a central bank, because the central bank deals with the accounts of the government as well as it deals with the accounts of the commercial banks. Whereas customer banker relationship is established in case of a commercial banks, as it deals directly with the accounts of the general public. As the central bank is having the authority to control the entire banking system, therefore they are controlling the commercial banks also. Whereas in case of a commercial banks, they can only request assistance from the central bank. Then the next important difference between a central bank and a commercial bank is there are certain statutory powers that can be exercised by the central bank in controlling the commercial banks, failing which the commercial banking activities can be suspended. Whereas in case of a commercial banks, they don't have any such powers. They have to simply follow the rules and regulations framed by the central bank, that is the Reserve Bank of India in case of India. So the next important difference is the central bank, they possesses the monopoly of note issue, as we already discussed, and I have said that it is the government which has given that monopoly of issuing currency notes to the Reserve Bank of India in India. whereas the commercial banks, they don't have any power to issue currency. Then the next important difference is the entire foreign exchange reserve is handled by the central bank. That is, in India, the entire foreign exchange reserve is handled by the Reserve Bank of India. Whereas a commercial bank can handle only a small portion of the foreign exchange, but that too with the consent of the central bank. So, and the last important difference between the central bank and the commercial bank is that the central bank, it acts as a banker's bank, it acts as lender of last resort, and it acts as clearinghouse, and it even controls the credit. Whereas the commercial bank, they don't have such a responsibility. And one more important difference between a commercial bank and a central bank is that the the commercial banks, through their daily operations, through their lending activities, they create credit. Whereas the central bank, through their policies, through their credit control devices, they control the credit. So these are some of the differences between a central bank and a commercial bank. And let me wrap up today's session. So we have first discussed the meaning and definition of central bank. Then we have discussed about what is the necessity of a central bank. Then we touched upon the topic, what are the features and characteristics of a central bank. And lastly, we discussed what are the differences between a central bank and the commercial banks. And I hope that you have understood this topic. And for any other queries, please email to me at mohammedsufiyan.kr@gmail.com. So until now, it's goodbye, and we will be meeting you in our next session. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching. Assalamu alaikum.